Typical, but we're moving forward, and there's a lot of discussion happening, which you must be excited to hear.
Yeah, no, the threshold's been set nice and low, and people already have a lot of experience with this. We're frustrated with the federal government for giving up on that promise, and certainly seeing that in other jurisdictions, Ontario, United States. We'll try not to go down that road, but people are really frustrated by that, and this is a really clear beacon in the more positive direction.
So as a Green, we often hear the Greens being the party that is more ardently supporting this issue. What is your experience within the party? Do you hear people wanting it because of self-benefit, or what is the things that you're hearing?
That's another fabulous reason to sort of take a step back from a partisan side, because obviously Greens would do better under a proportional system, because one of the most common things we hear at the door is, oh, I would totally vote for you, but you're not going to win. And which means people are not voting for what they want, they're voting against something that they don't want.
Right,
so
voting strategically, trying to make sure that their vote matters, which seems like it's a struggle in the current system.
Oh yeah, oh certainly. I mean, I know I had to run as a candidate provincially because I needed someone to vote for, because the other two parties I did not have any love for them at all, and certainly not, well, I mean, one of the candidates was nice, but our viewpoints were further away. So that's, I think, also under certain proportional systems, you could get to vote for both the party you want and the representative that you like in your region, because they might not necessarily be the same person. But definitely within the party, everyone's on board, and we've also, I think, largely, as a whole, we've tried to step back away from this as a partisan issue. So it's actually been kind of quiet for the Greens in BC because we're under different banners.
Exactly, which is good to see, because I think one of the things that people need to focus on with this issue is that it's not primarily about the parties, it's about moving power back to the people, back to the base.
Yes, I know our current premier certainly has said those words many, many, many times, but definitely across all places where I've canvassed since the word of the referendum has come out and bump into people in the NDP, and suddenly we've gone from the provincial elections where I don't say we were at each other's throats, but certainly there was some animosity there.
Tension.
Now we have a lot in common. We say, I mean, yes, we have things that we don't share in common, but let's not talk about that right now, because we have this glorious referendum happening, and then from that come other things that, oh, you also like environmental protection or other things like that, or social progressive policies. So
right, there's a little bit more collaboration across the lines.
Oh yeah,
it pulls people together towards a center.
Definitely.
So you talked about the Greens and the NDP, but what about outside of that? I mean, there are a lot of Liberal or Conservative voters federally and other ridings too. That, what is your take on how they feel about it?
So I certainly heard after the federal elections, when it came out that our Prime Minister was going back on his promise, that even though the Conservatives were not necessarily in favor of the system, they did agree that a politician should, keep their promises, especially if they said them over 2,000 times. But largely what I hear from, certainly from my own MLA, as much as I love her, I disagree that this would give rise to hate groups, or suddenly these radical fringe organizations. Greens have actually been fringe for a really long time. So
yeah, what's the definition of a fringe
exactly.
group?
But this is the language that comes out. We have these fringe groups that are more radical coming out and taking seat in the legislature. But I personally would rather see them in a more professional zone rather than right now, which is under the covers, in the dark, causing trouble and making all sorts of issues where we can't even reason with them because they're very well hidden from the rest of society. Or, I mean, they've been largely blocked out of it. So the only other argument I hear is that it's too complicated. We need to stick with the simple system, but honestly, I just learned about dual member proportional this morning. It took 5 minutes on YouTube, so
there's some great videos out there that people can use to get educated if they want to.
It's certainly condescending to British Columbians and Canadians overall, saying you couldn't possibly understand this
exactly.
system.
But what about New Zealand? New Zealand did it. There's tons of other countries that in the last 2 decades have moved towards a PR system. Are we saying that we're not as smart as these people? I think that's insulting.
And Canada's